Well, it's really a pleasure to be here. And first of all, I want to say that part of our excitement with our foundation is having really discovered Access Health Network. You have in this town a national story on how healthcare can be changed, and it's with Sherry Rice and her team. And what I feel what's going to happen is that it is going to be the combination of a revolutionary idea and the ability to execute it on the ground. And that's going to be the story of healthcare and the way that we solve healthcare. First of all, the foundation is joined with the Neurological Health Foundation of Texas. We have two board members with us. I'm also a board member of that group. Northwest Autism is our sister group, and the executive director is here, Beth. But I want to tell you a little bit about ATN, because ATN has been doing think tanks for 12 years. We're extremely good at what we do in the area of special needs and special needs children, a complex area. The first project was done with Northwest Autism Foundation, and at that 12 years ago, autism was not seen as a medical condition. It was seen as a neurological condition without any treatment possible. Meanwhile, we saw children that were projectile vomiting and diarrhea, and they were treated with electric shock treatment. We decided at the foundation to go ahead and take a look at bringing together some of the best treating institutions of the country, headed by Mass General, Baylor, University of Washington, Cleveland Clinic. And with these people, we put together over a period of several years the medical underlying protocols for autism, and that organization and that idea attracted about $70 million at NIH grants. We now have insurance in 26 states, including Nevada, on medically treating autism. On the recent statistics, even though they were grim on 1 in 50 with autism, 25% of the families said, our child no longer has the diagnosis because the treatment allowed us to have the child escape autism. This is the future, and we're proud of that accomplishment. The other is we put together 26 of the best gastroenterologists, and we had an insert in pediatrics. This took us 2 years. When we do these think tanks, we actually bring experts in their area together. John Mahoney is our executive director, and they work 6 months in advance in order to go ahead and have them work in teams. Then they come together with electronic voting, and they vote on their individual sections. And then after a couple of years, we then publish, and this one was in pediatrics, and it changed the way autism is seen for gastroenterologists all around the world. And we have thousands of kids now being treated. One of the conclusions we had is half of all the kids with autism had gastrointestinal disease. And the treatment protocols were set in pediatrics. And again, one of the things we loved is this was an 80-page insert in pediatrics, an 80-page insert. Not one word was changed. So we like what we do. The other project, and we're publishing it, we just got word, in fact, today, that Pediatrics has accepted an insert in pediatrics on can we identify a child at the age of 1 that has not yet had autism, and with microgestures and other visual signs, can we predict that that child will develop autism, and can we intervene and significantly change the outcome? The answer to both those hypotheses is likely yes. This will be a 40-page insert in pediatrics. It's taken us 2.5 years. And again, it was headed by the person who runs the Harvard Ladders program, the #1 expert in the planet. This will allow parents to understand at the age of 1, if they see these types of gestures, to intervene and prevent autism before it happens. In our pilot program, the pilot program had 36 children that were identified. They would have 50-50 would have had autism. At the end of 2 years with intervention, none had autism, none. But here is the incredible, I was just talking to Dr. Adams about it. The average IQ at the end of that time was 131. Imagine the difference between having an autistic child with a cost to society of $3 million and an untold cost to the family. Be able instead to be a fully functional member with an IQ that could teach at Harvard in microbiology. We're looking at a seismic shift with this paper. This will be published in Pediatrics. But as we've been taking a look over the last 12 years, something has been quite disturbing, and that is we've started to understand what is the cause of autism. The scientists now are concluding that 65% of the autism is in the womb during pregnancy because of toxicity. But it's not just autism. This was a Stanford publication, and it changed the world. People started saying it's not just a genetic problem, because we would not have gone from 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 50 with a genetic problem. There's something happening. When I tell people this story, they nod and say, well, of course this is probably what's happening. We all instinctively know something serious is going on. So again, we brought people a year ago, and we had a think tank, we reviewed information, and we decided this is our next big project. And by the way, I cannot think of a better place to do this than in Reno. The elements are perfect for it. So let me take you through some of the fundamentals. We've seen in the last 40 years an incredible shift that is taking place. On the left-hand column, you see that we've done extremely well in the types of diseases such as tuberculosis and hepatitis and rheumatic fever. All of these are way, way down in children. But look at the right-hand column. Areas that are chronic diseases are up exponentially. You hear about the figures of autism, but it's happening with multiple sclerosis and Crohn's disease and juvenile diabetes. Something is happening in a serious, serious way. It's not gone unnoticed. JAMA, the Journal of American Medical Association, came out with an unbelievably accurate and insightful article about the increases of childhood chronic conditions. And the last paragraph I put to the right, health and social welfare systems are unprepared for the rapid growth and demands that will arise from these epidemics. This is written by Jim Perrin, who was actually the head of our ATN project when we were working on it, who now is the president of the American Academy of Pediatrics. We're not talking about anything here about alternative. We're talking about this is known, and it scares people in the medical profession. Okay, let's take a look at the numbers. If we take a look, we have to conclude that we have unsafe pregnancies and we have unhealthy children. Let's look at the numbers. Miscarriages used to be 5%. A shocking figure, 31% of all the women that will get pregnant will have a miscarriage. Half of them won't even know they have it. 31%. It's nature's way of saying you're not having a baby. Preterm is 12%. The average IQ loss with a preterm baby is 8 points. They're twice as likely to die as adults, and they're twice as likely to have a preterm baby themselves. But now take a look after birth. Autism, 1 in 50. Asthma, 1 in 8. Allergic eczema, 1 in 5. Serious food allergies, 1 in 12. Going down the list, dyspraxia. My great doctor, Dr. Jay Schroeder, knows dyspraxia, maybe the only one here in the room, but it's the muscle spasms that don't work quite right. You can't throw a ball quite right. 1 in 10. 1 in 10. My God, what is happening? So if you add all of those up together, we have a pretty grim figure. Cancer now is the second leading cause of death with children. You think that cancer develops during childhood? It's developing in the womb. The cancerous substances that people are ingesting. Autism, 1 in 50. Now, the right-hand column is an amazing list. This was done by Mount Sinai. Dr. Landrigan, who is the leading expert in the world on toxicity in children in the womb. And he's concluding by blood spots that they did laser background treatment. This is what's causing autism. So if somebody says, gosh, I don't know where autism is coming from, this is where Dr. Landrigan said it's coming from. It's coming from lead, methylmercury. It's coming from organophosphates and organochlorines, things that should not be in baby to begin with. But when we talk about 1 in 50 in autism, in the Northwest Autism Foundation, this is what we think of. This is a child with autism. This is a child that all day is smearing fecal matter throughout the home. This is the life of many of the parents with children with autism that are untreated. So when we talk about 1 in 50, we talk about what it would be like to have a child that every single day, and if you try to stop them smearing fecal all over them, they scream until you allow them to do it again. This is the lives of these children. You don't see them because they don't go outside. So let's go with conception until 5 years old. 31% miscarriage, 12% preterm, and here's a shocking figure. By the age of 5, 40% of all children have a chronic disease they will not recover from. 20% of those children will have a mental illness they'll not recover from. My God, what is happening? That's 40%. The chances of a child, once the pregnancy has occurred, having somebody who's normally healthy like we used to, is 17%. The burden that's going to cause the medical system is unparalleled, unbelievable. It's also currently a $500 billion problem, childhood disease. Let's compare that to Social Security. John and I are going to enjoy Social Security here. It's $625 billion. Childhood disease is $500 billion. We can't be paying seniors $600 billion while we're paying to take care of our children $500 billion. It's not going to work. So how did this happen? The world stood still when a small group called the Environmental Working Group found that the body burden of children was not limited to just a few things were getting through to the fetus. There was the belief that the womb somehow protected them against all these toxins. Right, Tom? That's what we all thought about, right? Well, this group tested the core umbilical cord blood of children and compared that to what mother had in her blood, and they found that everything was getting through. The CDC went ahead, and we know the people at the CDC, they went ahead and said, we better replicate this. And for $20 million, they replicated it, and then they published it in pediatrics. 99% of the women are so toxic in the womb, it will affect the child. 25% have mercury at such a level it will affect 12 points of IQ. This is absolutely ridiculous. Why wasn't this publicized? It was not publicized because the American Academy of Pediatrics quite rightly said, we don't know what to do about it. It's all through our food supply, so we're going to say to the government, please take some action and protect our food supply. We're going to do it here in Reno. We're going to do it here in Reno. We're not going to have people in Washington, D.C. solve this problem. We're going to begin by changing behavior habits here. This is a developmental time of the baby. That brain develops from 9 weeks to 16 weeks. The woman finds out that she's pregnant, and she starts getting her first glimpse at what she should do in changing her habits about the 7th or 8th week. It's too late. It's got to be preconception. This program will work with pregnancy, but ideally it's 3 months before the pregnancy begins. P2I is a game changer. This was an article written in part by the CDC after they failed to do a population study. They got the same thing we did. They did their think tanks. They knew exactly what would it take to change outcomes. They went to Denver and they completely failed because the doctors were too busy to talk to the women about it. That's why Access Health Network is critical to this program. It's not about more science, it's about more compliance. It's about educating people on what they need to know and working with them to make sure these results don't happen. So what are we projecting on this 500-person study? And by the way, Alan Meadows and Ginger early on with the 80,000 employment group said immediately, we will do this study for you. I tell you, that was an unbelievable commitment on their part. We want to thank you for it and thank the commitment that you made. You'll hear more later. Well, this is supposed to be funny. So, as Yogi Berra, it's tough to make predictions, especially about the future. You got to be sort of in my generation to find that funny. I know, Yogi Berra. So we're predicting 50%. We will get a 50% drop in pregnancy complications and a 50% drop in childhood illness. 50%, 50%. What has the CDC said? We went back and talked to the CDC. They're projecting, if we do this properly, be a 70% drop in pregnancy complications and a 70% drop in childhood illnesses. That's the CDC's prediction. They're in charge of pregnancy health. So we're going to be conservative at 50%. But we need to stick our neck out and have a goal. During our think tank, we brought a pal of mine, David Berger. He's a pediatrician in Tampa, and he wanted to be here tonight. And I said, David, I can just talk about what you've done. He's had 500 pregnancies using this protocol that he's developed for the last 10 years. Unbelievable nutrition, genetic testing to see whether they can absorb folic acid, thyroid testing, and unbelievable fastidious working during the pregnancy, and he helped really develop a protocol. 500 babies in a row, no miscarriage, no preterm births. We're doing a retrogressive study of his practice. Helen, this is an amazing figure. And we're predicting 50% because these kinds of numbers wouldn't be believable, but we were all there in the think tank and we found 5 doctors, including Dr. Traver in San Francisco, with the same protocol getting the same kind of results. There was a study done in 1990. It was done in England, published. It was done in Surrey University. They took very high-risk couples. You can see on the first column, this is normal in UK, 25% miscarriage. Their history in the group of 367 was 38%, stillbirths 1% in the nation, 3% in their group. Low birth rate 9%, 15% in the high risk group. They went on an extremely careful diet with no toxicity, high levels of nutrition, and a great protocol for the doctors to work on. Here's the numbers. Published, validated, 0010. We're projecting 50%. I'd like to do better than that. Preterm facts. People think preterm is a baby a little bit early. It's a disaster. Let's take just one part of a protocol. Everybody likes Diet Coke. Has aspartame in it. I'm not taking a shot at aspartame, but a study in Denmark of 53,000 women showed for every can of Diet Coke you have a day, it increases 18% your chance of having a preterm child. Does anybody in this room know that? Will anybody in this room forget that? Okay. The cost of a preterm child is $50,000. The cost of a normal pregnancy is $4,500. So it's not just the fact that we want kids to be healthier. We can't afford this anymore. We simply can't afford it. We have collected an unbelievable team of scientists, and that's the way we do things at the forum. We just go after the best. And Carol Wagner, who you're going to hear from shortly, is among that category. She's a Kellogg researcher. She does a lot of work for the NIH, and she just finished a study that she was able to get a sharp reduction in pregnancy complications. She cut the preterm birth rate in half, and that was just using high doses of vitamin D. We also have Cedric Garland from UCLA, who's a top epidemiologist, and Bob Heaney, Dr. Heaney, who has published 400 articles, and a lot of them have been on pregnancy. These are the best we have. We're using a protocol that will be an IRB protocol, and Carol Baggerly will tell you more about it. We're just really pleased at what she's done. She and Leo Baggerly have the full confidence of a whole bunch of scientists and doctors in the world, including this list and this list. She comes from allowing the aerospace industry to know how to build a plane cheaper with data. She's the best we could find in data, and I just love her. She's just a remarkable person. The American Medical Association published last month a 20-page treatise on saying what is wrong with our medical system, and unless we change it, this thing is going to collapse of its own weight. This is not an alternative publication. This is JAMA. This is the American Medical Association. And what they talk about is we have to be able to have leadership come from our doctors. Our doctors need to step forward and say, we're going to change this. And when they surveyed their doctors, 90% of them said, it ain't my fault. And JAMA is saying it is your fault. You are captains of the ship. You lead this movement, and you lead us to better health by prevention, preventing things before they happen. And I think it's a great call to action, and I think there's some incredible doctors in this country that can provide that leadership, and hospitals that can provide that leadership. Okay, the most exciting thing, if you have revolutionary ideas, you need revolutionary ways of explaining them, right? We all know, what would we do without Google and the internet? There's a company called Intercall, which is the best there is in this world in doing virtual conferences, like Second Life. You've all heard about that. They go ahead and they dominate this category, and they do it for IBM globally. You can go to a conference, it's like you're there. You can go to forums, like you're there. You can take CME courses like you're there. Instant access, but this has been just with our major corporations. We have a representative from Intercall, and they're going to make a dramatic announcement here tonight about their commitment to this project. They are unbelievably good people, and they're a $3 billion plus company that's saying enough is enough. We've got to get information directly to parents and support our great doctors in being able to lead through technology. That's right, Jay, that's you. That's you. Okay, so he's going to tell you more about it later, but this includes workbooks. The ability of a woman and a man to get a workbook so they can go through and chart their daily activities, put all their lab tests in. It will revolutionize the way people can get information. They can also take the CME course and audit it just like a doctor. They'll know exactly the protocol and what to do. A lot of behind-the-scenes information. We will have unbelievable data. This is Carol Wagner, who you'll hear from. Unbelievable work that she just got done on pregnancy. Now, how about the cost of this? The whole project is $1.22 million. A cancer study costs $170,000 per patient. The National Child Study spent $11,000 recruiting patients to study them on toxicity and gave up on it, of no value whatsoever, and spent $30 million. We're spending $1.2 million. Why? Because the recruiting, the ability of having corporations to help and work with us dramatically cuts down on some of the costs. And Access Health, an unbelievable resource. So we're putting together things that businesses like to do, and that's to do it right. The results will be highly accurate. We're also talking with Save the Children. There's an interest that Save the Children has. This is not just for the wealthy. We want to have this as a global movement so that children can start out. It doesn't matter what their income is. It doesn't matter what their situation is. They're not going to be born with a deficit of 15 IQ points. Without treatment, this is the face of autism and childhood diseases that I see. This is a 14-year-old child that's tied to a crib in Indonesia. And she keeps company with 3,500 other children that are tied to cribs. The overwhelming problem of dealing with children with developmental issues at birth is not just carefully being cared for at home, like the child you saw in the fecal material. It's parents having to give their child up, institutionalize them, and tie them to cribs. We don't need to do this. The goal, you'll hear from David Chapalier, head of Easter Seals in Oregon. When we did this project, he says, I ain't doing this for some science project. I want our forum to commit in 5 years we're going to affect 1 million children. And we said, done. And that's the goal, and we're going to do it. And that's the vision of David Chapalier from Easter Seals. Safe pregnancies, healthy children. If we were able to do 1 million, it will save $50 billion. Who wants to put up $1 million and make $50 billion? I want to thank everybody here. This is an unbelievable opportunity of being here tonight with so many people that are so committed to the project. So we're not going to hear from Carol Wagner, who could not be here tonight. So I just shut the IT off. Okay. So thanks very much.